The house I originally built it for was one of my largest Chisel and Bit builds at the time, and I remember being super proud of it. Who knows, maybe one day I'll go back and redo it for fun.
Oh yeah, I did say that, didn't I? Well, roll the tape. For the past 8 years, I've been in love with a particular Minecraft mod known as Chisel and Bits. It allows for extreme block manipulation and fine detailing. I've done a few notable projects with it, but behind an unlisted wall sits an archive of many others, hidden due to the sheer amount of cringe my 15-year-old voice induces. Today though, we're pushing past that embarrassment, to shake hands with my past and see the full scope of my progress through direct recreation of my first full house build. Simply titled Rustic House, this build is the perfect snapshot of everything I was prior to my knowledge of environmental design, interior design, and before I was even a semi-functioning adult. I'm not just planning to rebuild it, but I'm going to outdo every build that came before, to capture where I am now skill-wise and build the house that reflects the journey I've taken alongside my audience. This is one of my toughest builds to date because it's more than just a house. It's a home away from home. To embark on this journey, we first must travel back in time to the original project. This so-called rustic house I did in 2018 as interior practice. During this era, content creation was just a hobby for me, and my work was heavily influenced by the MCRP community. This explains the strangely detailed textures, mod choices, and overall aesthetic. The house has its quirks, with an extremely open concept and nonsensical design. To tell the truth, after evaluating this build for the first time in 7 years, I wondered if redoing it was even possible. To me, it seemed like it was flawed from the inside out, and I couldn't imagine choosing this layout in one of my builds today, or the textures, or the style of decor. I mean, is this even rustic? What does rustic mean? It occurred to me that maybe redoing this build wouldn't mean a block-by-block recreation, or even using the same mods, simply because part of the building progress I've made is the choices I make before I even generate the world. The second I broke past that barrier, an avalanche of ideas came tumbling in, so let's get them sorted. There are 3 main things I want to change from the original: the textures, aspects of the layout, and the influence of the rustic style. First, we're ditching those hyper-realistic textures and switching to my favorite resource pack, Cokricot. It's a 32x pack with a muted, nostalgic palette and a companion mod filled with gorgeous furniture and materials. Thanks to a helpful comment on my last build, I'm also adding the Miniaturia mod, which pairs perfectly with Cokricot. Together, they'll define the aesthetic foundation for this project. With those swapped out, we have the full mod list for this build. Oh, and I should probably change this room too, for consistency. That's better. Onto the layout changes. I obviously don't want to stray too far from the original build, but I simply cannot stand whatever this is. I think it's cute that 15-year-old me thought this would be a nice choice, but after living in a house with 5 adults, I can say it's a choice I wouldn't make again. Privacy is nice. I didn't want to completely disregard little Sniff's ideas though, so I spent a few good hours in The Sims modifying and swapping rooms until I got a good layout that utilized the open concept correctly, and was sort of reminiscent of the original design. Here's the final layout I went with. We'll be referencing it as we go along. Finally, let's talk about the architecture itself. I have no idea what my original inspiration was for this build, but I can only assume I got the word rustic from a Pinterest board full of millennial farmhouse decor. There are certain aspects that fit, but especially the exterior is lacking, which makes sense considering it wasn't really my focus. In fact, I don't even think I built the original shell of this house. It was a terrible habit of my younger self, but one we have the opportunity to correct. For this rebuild, I'll be leaning heavily on the word rustic and exploring true rustic architecture. But what exactly is that? Well, I could hit up the ye olde Wikipedia page and give you the rundown of my learning. I thought it would be infinitely funnier if I emailed a natural professor to have him explain rustic architecture to you. So let me present iconic YouTuber and Professor Stewart Hicks.
Thank you, Sniff. Rustic is a word that I think sounds simple, but gets complicated and a little more interesting the more that you look at it. The word has meant really different things to different people at different times. I suspect that for most of us, it conjures images of buildings that owe their look, surprisingly, to the US National Park Service. During the 1920s, they were figuring out how to preserve parklands like Yosemite and Yellowstone. So they wrote a set of rules and policies to manage the land, as well as ones that regulated the style of all the new buildings that would be built within them. The goal was to make things like administrative buildings, welcome centers, or living quarters feel like they belong inside of their natural surroundings. There were 4 main rules. Number 1, use intensive hand labor in their construction. 2, rely on native species of wood and stone. 3, draw from regional stylistic traditions. And then 4, embrace symmetry in the room layouts. Although none of these ideas were really new on their own, this is the first time that the United States government authored a new architectural style and then demanded its use in public policy. Officials ended up labeling their new style rustic, which came from the Latin term rusticus, meaning of the country. Since then, the term rustic has taken on a sort of life of its own. You'll hear it used to describe log cabins and parks, but also rustic materials, furnishings, or even appliances in your home. This dartboard set, for example, doesn't look like it's made from anything that you'd be able to find in a national park, but it's the top result for when you search for rustic at Pottery Barn's website. That's due to its rough-hewn wood and earthy color schemes. That word association comes from that U.S. Park Service history. But when the Park Service adopted the term originally, the word rustic already had an established meaning. It had nothing to do with being woodsy. In classical European design, rustication, it's a masonry technique where large, rough-hewn stones are used just for the base of the building. They create a contrast between a textured stone below and smoother surfaces above. That creates a visual grounding and a sense of strength and permanence for the building. This technique, it dates back all the way to ancient Greece and Rome, but it saw a huge resurgence during the Renaissance. The weird thing, though, is that this technique was mostly popular in cities, and it wasn't exclusive to the country at all. Either way, it's incredibly fitting that rustic construction would have a significant place in Minecraft. The landscapes that you might wander across in your Minecraft world often bear a striking resemblance to preserved natural parks. So the Park Service's original principles, they'll still work to encourage constructions that are sympathetic to their surroundings, whether they're in Yosemite or in Minecraft. The first one, for instance, about hand labor, is generally the only way to build in Minecraft. The second rustic principle for relying on native stone and wood is perhaps the rustic idea most ingrained in the mechanics of Minecraft. Take villages, for instance. They're inherently location-specific. They're built to fit the biome that they're in. In a taiga village, the homes are made with wood from the surrounding forest areas. In snow villages, you might find igloos. And the same thing is true for players. If you build your home base in a jungle biome, it makes sense to construct it with abundant jungle wood around you. This naturally incorporates context into your build, and it satisfies many of the principles that were laid out by the Park Service. So in one sense, as long as you aren't using just a ton of blocks from the underworld, most anything that you build in Minecraft will demonstrate a rustic way of building. But maybe there are bonus points for a build that incorporates the stylistic motifs, like log frames or green-colored roofs, that we've come to associate with the term.
I hope you were listening.
Thank you, Stewart, for that fantastic explanation. I must admit, knowing how the principles of rustic architecture connect to Minecraft makes me feel way more confident about my build. By the way, if you love architecture and learning, I highly recommend checking out Stewart's channel. It's fantastic, and I've learned so much from it. With such a solid definition and a myriad of references for style, it was officially time to start this building. The original project was set in a suburb, but I wanted this version to feel engulfed in nature. On a chilly spring evening, I sat down and began to sculpt a simple floating island. Chisel and Bit is notoriously laggy, and I hope that by building in the void, I could let my computer focus on rendering the build and not chunks and chunks of landscape. Alongside that, it artistically plays into the idea of a snapshot, as if this home didn't always exist in the void, but was plucked from a moment of time and frozen. After placing a few custom trees and some flowers, my brain was already itching to work on the structure. I carefully laid out the wall plan I prepared, adjusting as needed. The hardest part then became choosing what material to use. The upside of Cocricot and Miniaturia is that I have plenty of options, and the downside is that I have too many options. I landed on green siding paired with a strong stone base, taking a cue from the Roman definition of rustic. The original build had an unused garage, but in this iteration, I decided to make it an extension of the house, wrapped in full stone siding for contrast and visual weight. With the exterior walls established, I moved on to the roof. I constructed each face individually and slowly built them in, finding their natural intersecting points. The main roof was annoying, the side roof a breeze, and then I remembered that the original build had a covered porch. Oh my, do I love giving myself a headache. That's foreshadowing. Once I established the angle, I extended the porch roof out and added another face at the midpoint. Chiseled roofs often take the longest out of any architectural feature, but it's something I've learned to tolerate over the years as my interest has shifted from interior to exterior design. Next up, we have the porch structure itself. In my opinion, the porches are where the craftsman influence truly shines in rustic architecture, with big block columns and an emphasis on clean rectangle motifs. As I worked upwards though, I couldn't help but feel like something was off. I examined my inspiration photos once again and noticed the pattern of rafters that often adorned these buildings. I really liked it when they sat atop the columns and peeked out a little bit, so I tried mimicking that effect in my build. This one detail took multiple hours of construction, but I found it oddly calming. I spent the entire time binging Hank Green videos and sipping tea. There are a lot of things I could say I like about this build, and you'll see many of them soon, but this decision, these rafters, really locked my confidence in place. There's something so grounded and real about them, they made the house feel solid. With those complete, I circled my attention back to the columns, building various support beams to integrate them seamlessly with the rafters. Finally, I focused on that centerpiece a bit, adding more and more beams until it felt supported. After some final scale adjustments, the porch was complete, for now, and it was onto the windows. Little me did one thing right in my old building, which were those classic craftsman-style windows. For this new build, I took a similar route, going with a more natural material instead of a solid black block. When I build windows with Chisel and Bits, I like to keep them modular, tileable little pieces that can be resized and reused across the build. It saves time and gives the whole house a sense of visual rhythm. However, I had a very special vision for the living room. Massive, picturesque panes that stretched from floor to ceiling. The kind of windows you'd want to crank open on a cool summer night, just to let the breeze and birdsong dance in. To add some dynamics to this area, I built the windows open at various angles to feed into the manual human touch of it all. Every time I built something new at this point, it just fought to be my favorite aspect of the build. To complement them, I built a small set above the porch that would pour light into the same open concept room. Then I built windows in the center part and next the extension of the house. These two windows felt a bit too simple and cookie cutter. So to jazz up the area, I constructed a dormer window on the roof. At this point, I had enough samples to shuffle the windows around as needed, and I thought I was nearly done with this phase. Until I remembered the sunroom. In the 2018 version of this build, I constructed a sunroom space for the first time. I didn't know it yet, but sunrooms, conservatories, and greenhouses would become a staple to my Minecraft projects. The same year of the original build, when I was 15, I was diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder, which is primarily caused by the lack of sun and the trickle-down effects that it has on our bodies. I do go outside, but where I live, it really is just that dark for half the year. My main way of combating it as I entered adulthood was sun lamps, spending extra time outside in the spring and fall, and visiting greenhouses in the winter. I thought I'd bring this up because it's one of those things I look back on and see as just a part of me. But in this 2018 build, it's a sapling in comparison to what is now a tree. My new build reflects this too, as I've swapped rooms in the layout and highlighted this beautiful sunroom as a focal point instead of just a feature. It's an experience you can tell I've lived more. Now the design breathes in a way that the old one never could. We'll certainly get into it more when I work on the interior, but for now I need to pull myself away to finish this exterior. There's still more windows to install and miles of trim to go. The rafters from the porch certainly inspired me, and I wanted to carry that detail to all areas of the house. I started with the roof overhang, then gradually built out a network of rafters, connecting and reinforcing them to give a sense of strength and the house more visual flow. My building process started to become more chaotic. By this point, I'd spent a week working on the building, and I was itching to work on the interior as quickly as possible. I built another skylight, the rest of the chimney, and a back porch. I also added a second exit on the extension that'd be perfect for trash storage or a car if someone in this house did drive. Then I went back to constructing windows, primarily in the northwest corner of the house. I was starting to feel good about the exterior, and it was time to add on my favorite part, the plants. I might have mentioned this before, but I really adore working with Cocricot and MT specifically for their plants. Chiseling plants is very difficult and often clunky, but these mods provide both beautiful textures and models. When it comes to landscaping, I often find myself putting on a nice video or some relaxing music and letting my thoughts drift while I place plant after plant. I started in the front and slowly worked my way to the back where I built raised beds. Unfortunately, my rampant attention issues were begging me to do something else, and so with the outside not entirely done, I moved on to the interior. Actually, before we continue, I do have to do the YouTuber thing. If you're enjoying this build, please consider liking, subscribing, or even supporting me on Patreon. This build took me ages, but your support can take seconds. You don't even have to do it right now. I promise I'll remind you at the end of the video. Now, back to the house. Since the original version focused so much on interior design, this is where the real comparison starts.
Stop staring at me with them big old eyes!
Having been so excited about the sunroom, I rushed to the back of the house. This area also has the biggest layout shift from the 2018 build. By swapping the kitchen and dining room, the flow of the house changed to a more natural progression, and a room as essential as the kitchen became more interconnected to various areas of the home. For the walls, I wanted to put the rust in rustic, with terracotta tiles, exposed brick, and soft brown plaster. Then came the cabinetry. When it came to finding inspiration for this room, I had a particularly hard time thanks to the AI-generated images that clog Pinterest to unusable standards. So for this house, I watched a lot of real house tours instead. As Stewart mentioned before, a crucial characteristic of rustic architecture and design is craftsmanship, and watching these commentated tours of rustic houses really highlighted this. There was so much focus on restored appliances, furniture, and architectural features. Hence, for the fridge and stove of this house, I went for a slightly less modern look, as if it was something that was old and then repaired. It also happened to match this espresso machine model from Cocricot. Oh, how I long for you, espresso-based coffee. Knowing I'd be building a pantry, I opted for open shelving on the back wall and filled it with dishes, glassware, and kitchen odds and ends. I built a trash can for some realism, added a few plants, and then got to the kitchen island. My idea was to bring in some cool colors to contrast the overall warmth of this room, and I finally settled on this beautiful blue. I constructed retro metal stools to match, but in the process noticed the potential of that back wall.
Such potential!
For some additional storage, I built a dark wood shelf for cookbooks, baskets, food storage, and dishes. The bottom counter probably holds old mail and likely some junk too. And just like that, the kitchen's complete, so let's move on to the sunroom. I started placing as many plants as I could. Luckily, Miniaturia has some fantastic plant models that can cling to slabs, which gave me a lot of creative freedom. Then I chiseled a round table and chairs, creating a cozy, informal dining spot. I strung up twinkling lights, added potted plants, and kept shaping the space until it finally felt just right. I even created a little potting table, the perfect touch for a room so deeply rooted in greenery. If I'm being honest, I'm incredibly glad I started with this area of the house. The comparison to the original build is staggering. This version feels comfortable and cozy and mature. With a little reluctance, I moved on from the sunroom and began working on the rest of the interior walls, mostly focusing on the living room. The original living room had this huge, high ceiling, and I wanted to preserve that sense of openness, but in a very grounded way. With the interior walls established, I felt a lot more motivated. Suddenly, I could see the entire downstairs layout forming in front of my eyes. Back to the decorating, my brain logically moved to the dining room, one of the smallest rooms in the house, but still charming nonetheless. Since this is a more formal room, I dialed back the rustic vibe just a touch and focused on detailed craftsmanship. I absolutely adore the art of wall paneling in all its forms, and in this case, it allowed me to work with some darker, richer wood tones. Again, the swap between the kitchen and dining room really makes the flow of these rooms so much nicer in my opinion. The large French doors add nice visibility to the kitchen, and the open wall into the living room makes transitioning from dining to evening relaxing so much easier. For contrast to the kitchen and living room, I chose a soft green sage for the walls. There's gonna be a lot of greens and browns in this build, so bear with me. The furniture for this room is relatively simple. I only planned for the dining table and a side console. I think that's what you call it. You might have noticed me occasionally building outside, by the way, and this was just to get more space. This antique white sideboard might be one of my favorite furniture pieces in the whole house. Honestly, I based it off of this one I have in real life, and it's just little details like this that make the space feel truly personal. Onto the dining table, I wanted something that looked like it weighed at least 200 pounds. Okay, maybe that's a bit much, but seriously, a running theme in every rustic dining room I saw was these big, chunky wood tables, and honestly, I love it. At my incredibly senile age of 22, I've moved a lot of furniture for myself and for friends, and easily the most memorable was helping my sister move her dining table, which we hauled through a wooded area to her back door. Luckily, moving tables in Minecraft is a lot easier than that. I went back and forth on the color of the wood grain before realizing I was right the first time, and I moved on to building an area rug instead. I built some matching chairs for the table and squeezed them into place at slightly different levels for some added character. And because there needs to be at least 2 plants per room in this house, I added a little fern and then started on the smaller details.
No, that is not
Fern.
Stop impersonating him.
Maybe this is just my targeted TikTok For You page, but I feel like organized wall galleries have really been making a resurgence in the past few years. And what better way to fill the empty wall space? When it comes to chiseling photos, I tried to make up random, kind of abstract blobs, but since this was a dining room, I also focused on adding various skin tones and trying to make the sort of group photos I'd expect in this kind of space. A few more extra details, and the dining room for me was complete. Now, it was on to one of the rooms I've been anticipating the most, the living space. I'll I'll admit, this was the room I had the highest hopes for, since it was the focal point of the house in the original build. I started with a toned-down version of the dining room's trim and painted the walls a warm brown. I spent some time touching up the ceiling, then moved on to the real centerpiece of this room, the fireplace. The goal here for me was to make a hearth that could actually be switched on and off with visible animation, and to do this, I was going to need to build around a campfire block. This fireplace I envisioned to be inset, a large contrast to the extruding centerpiece from last time. While searching for rustic inspiration, I did stumble upon some Hobbit-inspired homes with charming curved support beams, and these stood out from everything else I'd seen. I wanted to bring a little bit of that whimsy into this build by framing the fireplace with a wooden archway. And then on either side would be some built-in bookshelves that reference the built-ins from the original house. I won't lie, I'm thoroughly obsessed with this. Arches and woodworking are difficult, given the linear nature of wood grain. Simultaneously though, it's what makes it so impressive. If I could build my own house one day, I don't know how I'd do it, but I'd want something like this. On the opposite side of the room, I constructed some tall bookcases to properly complement the fireplace. Then it was back to constructing the actual hearth. It took some finagling, but ultimately I was able to get my working fireplace. By this point, my patience was definitely wearing thin. I think I was afraid of messing up the build or creating something I wouldn't love. I was scurrying around like a little rat, restless and unfocused instead of working. Finally though, I pulled myself together enough to start on the sofa. Sticking to our palette, I chose another shade of green. In many of my Chisel and Bit TikToks and videos, I get comments like, "This is just 3D pixel art." And they're right. And that's exactly how I felt, especially while crafting this slightly mid-century inspired sofa. I used flat color block gradients to their fullest potential to define shape and shadow. The couch turned out beautiful, but of course I needed more seating. As torturous as it is sometimes, I've grown to love building diagonal armchairs. I constructed one to perfectly match the sofa and fill in this little corner of the room. I added some translucent curtains to the giant window and designed an adorable rug to cover the floor space. Mimicking the tables from my old build, I constructed a glass coffee table and a small console for the back of the couch. Now it came down to the little clutter, the small details that make the space feel alive. A blanket casually draped over the arm of the sofa, flickering candles, and of course stacks and stacks of books everywhere. For lighting, I made a hanging lamp, but honestly I only half liked it and decided I'll return to it later, maybe. Because now we're on to the art studio. In the previous build, right next to the entryway, there happened to be a little extra space, which I never touch.
There's nothing there.
But in this version, I'm fixing that. I immediately thought of turning it into an office or a studio. It honestly seemed like the type of room that could be anything, but I've been itching to make something like that. Also, when I thought about the kind of person that might live here and the decor of the home, it truly felt like the home of an artist, or perhaps an architect. I began with an adjustable drafting table, already angled, ready for drawing. Then I brought in the easel I made for my previous cottage build. I've had the honor of being in many dedicated art spaces over my lifetime, and thus the construction of this room went smoother than any before. While I love a messy room, when I thought of the characterization of this home, I couldn't help but make it moderately organized. I imagine that while our architect inhabitant uses it, so do a lot of other members of the household, hence the multiple workstations. With that room finished, we shift to an area that completely diverges from the original design. Though you might argue it's something I should have added a long time ago. It's funny how adulthood changes your perspective on homes. In this extension, I made 3 new rooms. The one I'm currently building is a second entrance, mudroom, and laundry room, but I'll also be adding a bathroom and a pantry. I brought in the same cabinets from the kitchen and built my own washing machine and dryer using the modded one as a reference. Honestly, I was having a hard time filling this room, so as a quick breather, I switched gears and started on the downstairs bathroom. I spent some time experimenting with the tile options from both Cochricot and Miniaturia. For now, I settled on a rich navy blue palette. I opened the ceiling and constructed some more support beams to continue the rustic vibes. Then it was on to the bath fixtures. Last build, I didn't show the bathroom construction on camera, so to all my bathroom lovers, I guess this one's for you. Since we have the space, I'm constructing a full bath, with a standing shower that would probably be ideal for washing a muddy dog. Then, as per usual, I'm changing the color of the room 6 different times before deciding on, you'll never guess it, green with brown tiles. Back to the shower, I crafted a wooden divider that connects elegantly to the beams above. Typically, water and wood don't mix, so we can only hope that this is treated properly or synthetic or something. For the toilet and cabinet, I leaned on modded blocks. By this point, I was feeling a bit exhausted and eager to wrap up this room. Of course, I also brought in more plants to soften up the space and added little touches here and there to make it feel lived in. The final flourish was a rug, laid just a little askew, giving the room that perfect, imperfect vibe. And just like that, the first bathroom was done. The third room in this extension is the pantry, which is the tiniest room in the whole house. It has 2 doors which connect the kitchen and the utility room, therefore it's more so a little hallway. Here, I'm mostly stuck with Coquicot and miniature blocks since I was getting a bit worried about block lag and I wanted to save my detailed chisel designs for upstairs. Once that little room was done, I then went back to the laundry room to make some detergents and soaps alongside some clothes ready to be folded and put away. Right next to the second entrance, I constructed a closet, or at least the facade of a closet since it didn't open. Surprisingly, I didn't expect to love this part of the house as much as I did, but homes can't be built purely on aesthetics. To feel truly livable, a space needs functionality. And beyond that, layout is everything. It shapes how we move and how we live. The kitchen used to be tucked into a corner, almost suffocating that crucial area of the home. Now, with more room to breathe, people and supplies can flow easily, making daily life smoother. This feeling is amplified by the change in the main hallway, which now acts like the artery of the home. It's also the last area we need to spruce up before heading to the second floor, so let's get to it. First up, we have the staircase. These are technically the first stairs I've built on camera. The Barbie house had an elevator and the cottage had a ladder to the loft, so this is a new milestone for me. They're nothing special though. I opted for the same faded wood I'd chosen for so much of the house, then I continued with the beams, adding a vertical one at the bottom of the stairwell. I didn't do anything super fancy for the banister, just metal and wood. Now we bounce over to the opposite wall, where I have some barn doors to construct. Given how farmhouse and rustic aesthetics blend so seamlessly, these thick sliding doors were a must. I saw them in nearly every rustic home I researched. The original build had sliding doors too, but they looked quite different. This time, I wanted the doors to feel heavy and reclaimed, like they'd weathered years of use. I imagine they'd spend most of their time wide open, inviting easy access into the living space, but it's nice to know that there's still a chance for privacy when needed. With the big pieces done, it was time to focus on the details. That blank hallway wall was begging for a photo gallery, and I happily oblige. During this part of the build, I was live streaming on Twitch, which made the process both fun and lengthy. Having dozens of other minds throw ideas into the mix tends to slow things down, but in the best way possible. For the large picture frame, I chose a still from my favorite Ghibli film, and then fudged the rest. Moving over to the main entry, I built a sleigh bench, to which my chat immediately asked how exactly does a bench sleigh? Then I built a shoe rack and a little hook to go above it. It is looking a little empty though, so let's add a raincoat. Someone in my chat also suggested hanging dried plants, and it made for a super cute touch. Everything looked fantastic, but the wall color was no longer sitting with me. My chat and I had a large discussion about it, changing it about a dozen times before we landed on a color that matched the rug.
I'll have a
Green.
How original.
and with extra
Green.
Daring today, aren't we?
Last, I felt as though we needed a little entryway table, the kind of place you can dump your keys and junk mail after a long day. With some final touches, the hallway was complete, and once again, it turned out way better than I expected. The completion of this hallway also marked the completion of the downstairs, and we could officially move upstairs for the home stretch. Once again, I'm starting by laying out the walls and building them up, creating a solid base to work from. The one thing that really bothered me about this hallway was how windowless it felt, so I added another skylight to bring in some more natural light. I wasn't quite ready to decorate this space yet, so I moved on to the primary bedroom, a room I had high hopes for. In the 2018 version, this was a space I was really proud of, and now I really wanted to step up my game. My brain slipped into support beam mode again, and I spent a good hour or so crafting them to give the room a vaulted ceiling effect. I was building during a stunning sunset, and already the space was starting to feel like something special. To bring in more natural charm, I created a paneled wall in the back where the bed would rest. Instead of a canopy bed, I went for something simpler, letting the ceiling do the heavy lifting. I built the comforter to look fluffy and plush, and then... whoa. Is anyone else feeling a little dizzy?
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
I'm so sorry, I've been wanting to do that bit since I started my channel. The day of this footage, I happened to have a little accident. I tripped and hit my head, and for the first time in my life, I got a concussion. It wasn't anything too bad, but it did noticeably affect my ability to be on my computer and to concentrate for long periods of time. And honestly, I was really upset about it. Not only was I so close to the finish line, but it finally felt like I was creating something truly impressive. Don't worry, I made sure to rest, but once my physical symptoms eased up, I dove back in, eager to finish what I started. I built 2 side tables to match the bed, and then continued my theme of built-in storage with a full wall closet bookshelf combo. And in the small nook, I crafted a large dresser to match. I borrowed the carpet from the living room, recolored it, and eventually changed the entire room's color scheme. I adored the red purple, but I wanted to save it for another bedroom, and truly imply that this was the bedroom of whomever decorated the house. With that said, we need another workspace. At first, I tried building my own desk, but ended up liking this modded one a lot better, just for the variety. I added some plants and some smaller... What's going on here, Sniff? What are you doing? Anyways, this room was severely lacking in wall decor, so I fudged some random art and decided to move on for now. This leaves us with 4 rooms left, 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. At first, I went across the hall and started on the paneling for this very cutesy room, but then I drifted to the other bedroom. This room also existed in the previous home. Instead of going for full open concept, I added some interior windows that could align with the skylight at just the right time to allow light in from the west. For furniture, I brought in some pieces from some other builds because I was earnestly struggling to be present in this moment. I shifted the bed around until I found the right center point and began recoloring everything in the room. The nice part about the rustic style is that it has many different sub-styles. Whether it's industrial rustic, mid-century rustic, or farmhouse rustic, for this room, I wanted to go a bit sleeker, a bit more industrial, so I focused on wood furniture framed with black metal. Bedrooms are such personal spaces, and it's hard for me not to create stories in my head. I imagine whoever lives here to be a bit more tech-savvy than the rest of the house, someone who's passionate about photography as their primary art, which admittedly is a bit inspired by my older sister, who started photography as a teenager and now does it as a full-time job. With that done, I moved on to the bathroom nestled between the 2 bedrooms. I started with the kitchen cabinets as a base, recolored them white, and built a sink. By now, I was fully aware I'd been using way too much green, so I decided to let it go for just this bathroom and go with a classic light blue and gray, something clean, simple, and fresh. I honestly have no clue if this style of shower is even realistic or functional, but my brain insisted it must be. This bathroom isn't nearly as nice as the one downstairs, but at this point I was willing to accept whatever I could get done. The length of this whole building process was starting to weigh down on me, and I found myself really frustrated with the lack of concentration my concussed state brought me. All of the momentum I'd built downstairs suddenly felt like it was slipping away. Still, I was determined to see this through, so I pushed on to the last bedroom. I already tackled the walls earlier, but now it was time to furnish it. I started by building a rather intricate carpet to match the beautiful wallpaper. Thinking of a character for this, I thought of someone who's a touch more on the feminine side. To go back to the original build, I brought in the beloved metal bed frame. I recolored it and resized it from a double to a single to better accommodate the room. From there, I also built a small desk, side table, and puttered around trying to decide how I wanted to decorate this space. It reminded me a lot of my own childhood bedroom, one that my teenage self claimed to outgrow, yet I never removed the stuffed animals from my wall. You know, I mentioned at the start of this video that I was unable to watch my old videos due to the sheer amount of cringe they brought me, but I really want to say I'm still proud of my younger self for doing something I liked, and having the ability to post it online. Shortly after I posted the video featuring the original house, I took a 2-year break from content creation, for a large part because I thought it was cringe and embarrassing to make Minecraft content. Who knows, maybe it is, but I don't think it matters. If I can offer any wisdom from the 7-year gap from here to here, it's that having interest and enjoying things is totally fine. So much of my young 20s has been realizing just how much those interests I held from 12 to 15 are important to who I am now. I mean, if I hadn't been interested in Minecraft roleplays and Minecraft as a child, I wouldn't be doing this job right now. I mean, dude, Minecraft literally invited me to their offices recently. It's all a butterfly effect. TLDR, growing up doesn't have to mean shedding your interests. It can simply mean having them grow with you. With the last bedroom complete, I had only 2 stray rooms left, the ensuite bath and the upstairs hallway. I gravitated towards the smaller room first. The door placement made it a little awkward, but I managed to figure out how to fit a standing shower, toilet, and sink. For the shower, I followed a similar style to the rest of the house, and then when it came to the glass doors, I went with a slightly industrial look. I brought in the same sink from the other bathroom and made a little oval-shaped mirror just above it. And just like that, this little room was done, leaving us with our final space, the upstairs hallway. You know, for the finale of something so grand, it feels weird that it's just this room. This space is by far the most awkward in the entire house and the one I dislike the most. There are many ways in which hallways can be a waste of space in a home, and if I left the room like this, it wouldn't be that far off from many I've seen. But in my heart, I knew the best way to make use of this hallway is with a gallery. And logically it makes sense, since this house is so artistic. Artists display work, it's just that simple, I think. So I have one more story for this video, and I apologize, it's kind of sad. A week following my concussion, I got back to work, yes, for about a day, and then I found out that my grandma passed away. To be honest with you, we weren't very close. I didn't meet her until I was 20. However, in that short time, we mostly talked about one thing: painting. You see, she was a very talented landscape artist. Her apartment was filled with dozens of pieces, some proudly displayed on walls, most confined to a closet. When I thought of what to put on the wall of my silly little Minecraft house, I could only think of these. The landscapes and the handcrafted nature fit perfectly with the rustic aesthetic, and most importantly, I just wanted to. Sometimes I have big explanations, but in this case, I can only say it just felt right. As I hand-painted each one, following the strokes of my grandmother's real paintings, I couldn't help but also feel a little relieved. When I started this project, I had such high hopes for it as a recreation. Every room was a challenge, paralleled against the chaotic nature of my own life these past months or even years. And in a way, it certainly feels like the snapshot I intended, settling into place with the last bit. Obviously, this became quite the project. It was an idea I had from the moment I wrote it into that old script, and as per usual, it kicked my ass. Initially, this video was to show you guys the way I've improved in Minecraft building. But actually going through the process, sitting down with my 15-year-old self, and drawing a line from here to here made me realize how much that improvement is connected to myself outside of the game. Like we build our rustic architecture in real life, sourcing from the local environment to create unified and natural works of art, we can also source from ourselves. It doesn't matter if it's a detailed structure or our very first Minecraft build. The way we live and the way we play, especially together, is at the heart of every great design. I'm happy to say a lot has changed in the past 7 years. I do not confine myself to my room anymore, nor do I feel shame for my interests. In fact, because of those interests, I have found friends and family and community, people who bring me little slices of life to incorporate into everything I make. They are the environment from which I build myself, and because of that, I have improved. Thank you for watching.
Morning dew on cherry trees. Fruits that carry tears, the soul and heart retrieves. So many stories, many deeds. The man who wept it breathes instead of sowing seeds. And he lives on in the land's memory. I found myself at home, away from home. This soil, both far and dark. The sun intones as life and death goes on. The ground I thread around.
A verbal thank you to my Patreon members for being so patient with me throughout this entire process. This build is available for download on there. I'm really excited to come back and do content creation again. The concussion was obviously a lot, along with everything else. However, another aspect of the delay was the fact that I got to go to Stockholm, Sweden, and see the actual Minecraft offices, which I wouldn't have been able to do if it wasn't for your guys' support, so thank you so much. Oh, and before I forget.
Yes, we did it! Alright, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Minecraft Bed Wars. Yeah. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, or my YouTube channel, and wow, I keep opening this. And I'll see you next time. Bye! Say bye, Kate.